Hey everyone, this is Boba Sans, and I am back with another Webtoon Canvas interview. Today we have the creator of Voice of the Siren, Jehded Waffles.
Hello.
Yeah, and we're just gonna jump right into it. Jehded Waffles has a webtoon with absolutely excellent world building, and I am sure you guys are all going to want to check it out after this interview.
Thank you. After the self-proclaimed pacifist, Gideon Jada violently loses someone important to her, she joins a second government-sponsored tour, a program to expose the citizens of the cities to a career. However, instead of taking another research tour, she decides to take the military tour. She meets 5 others who would change her life forever, and she theirs. Follow the team as they travel the world of the 2260s to learn about the military, themselves, and the past following them.
Okay, so let's just jump right into the interview. So, how did you get into art?
Okay, I have been drawing, I don't know, since I was born. So I drew when I was really, really little. I like to draw animals, and my dad was a really good illustrator and sketcher, and he liked to paint. And so I would ask him to draw things for me, and then I would kind of mimic how he drew them.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I drew a lot of things like chipmunks and frogs. Actually, I started to draw Sonic the Hedgehog when I was young. And then I discovered Sailor Moon. And that since that moment, I was into anime. So all throughout middle school and high school, I drew anything related to anime that I saw on Toonami. I don't know if you've heard of that, or Adults.
Yes. I used to love
So
Toonami too.
me too. Is it even around anymore? I
I
don't.
think they brought it back actually. It was gone for a really long time.
Yeah, I used to watch it when it was like that 3D looking robot who would each show. So like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball. And then Adult Swim. So I started watching Adult Swim, I think, in high school. And any of the anime on there, I just absolutely ate it up. Loved it.
I totally relate to that. I used to watch Naruto on Toonami actually, but I was so young. I wasn't consistently awake at the time. So I would
Uh-huh.
just tune into like random episodes and I'd have no idea what the heck was going on. But then I'd be like, "Oh yeah, this is so cool. They're going to fight each other."
I have a confession to make. I have never seen Naruto.
You've never seen Naruto?
No, I'm not an official anime fan, I guess, anymore, huh?
Uh, no, you're fine, you're fine. Me and my friends were actually talking the other day. I've never seen, even though I know some of the memes, I've never actually seen Dragon Ball Z. And so my friend was
You have to
making
watch.
fun of me because she kept sending Dragon Ball Z memes, and I haven't actually seen it, but I'm the biggest weeb in the group.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Are there any other media that influence you?
Oh, absolutely. So after college, I worked in a movie theater for a
Mhm.
while, and lucky me, I got to see movies for free. And so I watched a lot of film. So, and like I would take bits and pieces of what I liked. And I was kind of like writing stuff at the time. So I drew comics kind of as a kid. And then I kind of took a break during college. And then I started drawing again. And I would pull ideas from movies that I liked.
Mhm.
I already said the animes, 90s and 2000s, big influence on my art and my writing. And then also grew up with like PlayStation 2 RPGs, definitely influenced by like Final Fantasy and games like that. And then just listening to music that gets me all like pumped up and it gives me ideas. So yeah.
So, how did you end up moving towards comics?
That's a good question. So I would draw comics as a kid, like on paper. And then in high school, I finally got a really old model of what do you call it? It's a Win tablet technically.
Hmm.
HP came out with their fancy Win tablet, and it had a pen, and it was a really thick tablet screen. And I had Photoshop on there, and I drew on it, and I started making comics in MS Paint as well as Photoshop. But yeah, I mean, I had manga when I was little that I would read as well, like the Sailor Moon manga, which actually came in the I don't know what they're called, the shorter, not like a full book of it, but I can't remember what those are
Oh,
called.
did you used to get them in like the magazines?
Yes, kind of like that. They would only be like, I don't know, maybe 20 pages long. And so I would kind of mimic that art style, and it's like I would actually draw like the halftones by hand. I didn't
Mm.
realize that there were screens that you could use to do that. But yeah, so that's how I got into doing comics on paper, at least.
So, another cool thing about you is you've actually done teaching in Japan.
Yes, I have.
So, how did you end up
um,
actually doing that?
it's something I recommend everybody do. So what actually happened was I went to university. I don't I don't even know where to backtrack to start this. I went to university for biology.
Mm.
I wanted to go for art, but I don't want to say I had an unsupportive environment. I mean, there was never the direct statement, don't do that. It was more like, oh, you should do this because you would get a better job doing this. And now we find out that that's not necessarily true. But anyway, I got my degree and I graduated, and I was having trouble getting work in the field.
Mm.
I was mostly applying for like lab tech positions, no luck at the time. And so I worked at the movie theater and thought, I don't really want to do this. And I remembered when I was taking my Japanese language courses in undergrad, someone had mentioned the JET program. Have you heard of that before?
I actually have, but why don't you explain it to the audience?
JET is a Japanese exchange and teaching program where you get hired. They're kind of like a middleman. They hire you on behalf of the Japanese government to go over to Japan and work in a public school over there. And they place you. So you could be placed anywhere in the country. They give you, to be honest, actually, I don't know how it is anymore, but they give you 3 options for preferences, but they don't always follow those. I got kind of close to my third preference. My third preference was Osaka, and that was because I had done a quick 4-week program over there in 2006 when I was in undergrad. You can tell how old I am now. And oh gosh, I loved it. So I was in Osaka for that. So I wanted to go back to Osaka, and luckily they placed me fairly close to that city. And then you could be placed in elementary, middle, high school. I was placed in a high school, and very luckily I was placed in a science-focused high school.
Mm.
And yeah, you can stay up to 5 years. It's a yearly contract, and you would renew, I think, towards the end of your first year, and then likewise second year, third year. I wanted to stay for 6, but I stayed my maximum 5. I actually planned on staying for just 1. I didn't know if I would like it or not, but I absolutely fell in love with my school and with my community, and I really felt like, I don't know, I really felt like I belonged there in that time period. It was a good experience for me.
So, what was it like to live in Japan?
I think the best word is convenient. So, not just like the foods and vending machines, the stuff that many people already know. The public transportation was just unreal. So, I grew up not in the city, and so to go to a city or an area really that was just so populated and so well, I mean, just the infrastructure is designed so well to support that many people. It was really, really cool. I could just hop on a train and go somewhere whenever. And the timing on the trains was remarkably what's the word, on time. And the food was great, the people were great. I mean, it was just great all around.
So, I'm also wondering if living in Japan had any influence on your artwork or your comic.
Absolutely. And maybe not in the way you would guess. While I was there, 2 main things. So one main thing is seeing people of all ages reading manga on the trains. It made me kind of feel okay about being the age I was and still wanting to create a comic, especially with content that is, I wouldn't say mature, but more adult themes.
Mm.
And it made me feel like, hey, what I'm doing is valid. So that's one big thing. And the other big thing is being a person or being a foreigner, I guess, in another country really opens your mind up to reflect on yourself and your values and assumptions you've made about your own culture, good and bad. And so that, I think that more than the first thing has the biggest effect on my work.
So what you mentioned earlier with the like everyone reading manga on the train and the
Mhm.
possibility for content that is not necessarily geared towards children. For me,
Yeah.
that's what's exciting about the possibilities of Webtoon too, because I feel like comics are still very underrated here, even though a lot more people are reading manga and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Absolutely.
So now let's transition into talking about Webtoon and webcomics themselves. So, how did you end up doing webcomics and how did you discover Webtoon?
I actually was told about Webtoon by my students in Japan. They said, "Oh, you should read Line Webtoon," because I think they saw me with a paper comic or something like that. I don't even remember what brought it up. And I'm like, "What are you talking about? What is Line Webtoon?" And over there, and to be honest, I left in 2016, so I don't know how much or how popular the app is still. But Line is a messaging app. I don't know if you've heard of it, and that's it. It seemed to be the most popular app among the age group, at least that I worked with.
Hmm.
And when they said you should check out Line Webtoons, I'm like, what do you? I already have the messaging app. And then they showed it to me, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is actually really cool. Now, what they showed me, of course, was in Japanese. So I took a look at it, and then I also took a look at. Do you know the app Comico? I don't know if you've.
I think I've heard of it, but like explain it a little bit.
So Comico is similar. It's still like the scroll format, and to my knowledge, I think it's only in Japanese. I still have it downloaded on my phone,
Mm.
but I don't open it as often anymore. If I want some reading practice, I open up a comic. But yeah, I saw those, and I just fell in love with the scrolling format. And then I discovered the English equivalent at the time with Tapas, and I started reading some comics on there. Shout out to Phantom Land; it's one of my favorite comics. But yeah, I was on Tapas a little bit, and then people had mentioned Webtoon, and then I took a look at Webtoon in English, and I'm like, okay, I really want to publish to this.
Yeah. So is Voice of the Siren your first comic then? I mean like online one?
Online, yes, absolutely.
You have quite a few episodes up. I don't know how many. How many do you have up?
Your guess is as good as mine. No, I did I hit 50 yet? I'm not sure actually. I'll check.
Yeah, you're at 52.
Good
So
job, me.
So what was it like for you to first start posting on Webtoon versus now then?
That's a really good question. So I think when I started, I had like no expectations at all. I didn't think anyone would follow me or comment or like any of my episodes. And like, I think when I hit 20, it was at 20 or 30 or something. I just remember leaping for joy that 20 people would read my comic. So at the time, I had no expectations. But as time goes by, I think I get harder and harder on myself. And I'm sure a lot of creators experience this.
Hmm.
You learn more and you kind of want to, or you learn more and you follow other creators and you kind of want to be doing better and getting more subs and likes and stuff like that. And I don't want to call it a trap, but it's kind of, I feel like it's getting harder and harder. So my expectations are
So like your expectations get higher and higher as you post more episodes.
yeah, and I think I just get harder and harder on myself as I see the growth not increasing, and just watching other people grow much more quickly. And I think it's easy to fall into the mindset to always compare yourself to other creators and wanting to do better when really you have to sit down and define better for yourself. So right now, I'm sure like many other creators, I'm kind of struggling with what my goals should be.
Mm.
I think you've talked about this on your own channel, about making your own goals and not getting lost in those numbers. So, yeah.
Yeah, it certainly is a struggle for me too, as someone who would like to do art professionally. Like,
Hmm.
on a personal level, I think at this point I have hit the amount of popularity that makes me feel like, okay, people are actually reading this comic. Probably when I was
Hmm.
around 700 subs, I would say I had the best relationship with my community because there's enough people who were like interested in reading that I could talk to
Yeah.
people, but there weren't too many that I couldn't talk to everyone, and there weren't people popping up that I had to block.
Yeah. 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 I mean, and that kind of engagement at that level is much more meaningful than anything else, I think. Um, I think what has happened with me, and you're more than welcome to add or cut this.
Mm.
The reason I have those I have is Webtoon dropped me on specials, I think, on the front page. And it was like a bam overnight. I was like, wait, what happened? How do I have this many people following me? But really, since then, it hasn't really grown. And I, I don't really consider those numbers as representative of the engagement because my comments average 2-3 comments per episode, which I'm absolutely grateful for.
Mm.
But I it kind of ties back to what I was saying. I really feel like the engagement at a manageable level is more meaningful than sub count and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. What I noticed from being put on recommended back in February for a little while, uh, for people who don't know, recommended is on the Canvas page of the site, so you don't necessarily gain as many subs from that, but it is quite the boost. I don't
hmm
think I really noticed that many new people from that actually sticking around. I don't know if they're reading or not, but
yeah,
they're certainly not engaging. And with Webtoon, you can really only tell if a person exists when they comment or when they like. You can't see how many people are reading your comic to your most recent episode, which is kind of annoying because you don't really know how many
yeah,
actual readers you have.
yeah, yeah,
So it's sort of a difficult thing. And then also comics that might be good and they pick up a lot of subs when they're on the front page because Webtoon doesn't have the best way to sort through the Canvas series. They're not necessarily gaining that many subs from posting on site otherwise. Like, I definitely get most of my audience from other places, and maybe then they'll
hmm
go read my Webtoon.
yeah. I think that's a good way to get an audience anyway, because you get people who are genuinely interested in your work, who are wanting to engage with it, and even when they don't engage, you still have people who are interested in the work, rather than oh that might be cool, I'll sub, come back to it, kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
thing.
for sure. I've also heard from several people who have ended up on the front page. It's totally normal to get a bunch of subs and then have a bunch of those people actually unsub a week or two later because apparently since Webtoon
Absolutely, I
doesn't have like a want to read list, people will just sub to something instead of writing it down, and then if they check it
yep,
out and they don't actually like it, they'll unsub.
yep. Yeah, I lost, I think, 200 subs at one point. I think it was over the span of a week or two. And then steadily, as, as I would continue to post episodes, I would continue to lose subscribers instead of grow. But it's kind of leveled out since then. But yeah, I definitely think that's a thing that happens when you get put on the front page.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, any other differences in your first working on your Webtoon versus now?
Um, I don't know. I feel like I mean, I'm sure you experience this too. I feel like it's such a slow process. Um, I feel like I haven't told anything yet in my story. I mean, I have. I've been posting for a little over a year now, and I feel like there's so much to tell. And I don't know if you want to get into that yet, but I have the entire first arc written, so I feel like I've moved an inch when I've got 30 feet to go.
Mm. Yeah, I definitely relate to that, which is ugh, it's just giving me so many complicated feelings. Like my story was going so slow, and then now I'm rebooting it, so it's gonna go faster, but
Mhm,
we're back to the
mhm,
top.
mhm. No, I think that's a good thing though, because I mean, I've done that with my writing, where I wrote the whole thing out, and I'm like, this is gold, this is great, and then I would continue writing, and then I go back, and I'm like, I could have consolidated this, I could have done this differently. I think I need to just wipe what I have, maybe reference what I have, but wipe it and just kind of start from scratch.
Yeah, yeah. Part of why I'm spending so much time doing writing, because that's all I've been doing for the past 2 weeks. I've been missing drawing
Oh,
so much. Is I was
oh,
talking to one of my friends, and she was saying like, now that I think about it, authors have the advantage of they actually get to go through a couple of drafts worth of writing before they actually start their book. A lot of webcomic
yeah,
artists are just
yeah,
writing as they go along and seeing how it works out.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, so next I wanted to get into uh what's it like to be an older Canvas creator, because a lot of the people I've met who post on Canvas are teens or in their early 20s.
Yes, and disclaimer, I am 34 years old, I think.
Maybe.
um, maybe I'm 35, maybe I'm 52. No, I'm kidding.
Oh my god.
I'm in my 30s. I think it's isolating, but I think that's mostly um, me doing that to myself. Um, Kind of what you said, like everyone I follow in the comic world is much younger. So often in 20s or teens. Um, and um, some of the people I listen to as well are kind of older, but they've had a comic career for a long time.
Mm.
So um, it's I feel like I'm alone, but it doesn't need to be that way. I mean, there are so many things that I can take. For example, your YouTube channel, you give so much good advice.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
eh, yeah, oh gosh, my pleasure. That's why I'm sub to you. So yeah, I mean, it's not a completely isolating thing, but it's always nice to have folks of similar age groups or backgrounds, so you can talk about stuff. And um, I think really the main thing is it's not necessarily age. It's more I went down a different career path, and it didn't really. I don't want to say it didn't work out. I mean, I have no
Mm.
regrets at the path that I took, but it would have been nice if I had started, I don't know, 15 years earlier. I mean, the digital format was there. Like webcomics have been around, so there's a little bit of regret in that I didn't start earlier. There's mild regret that I didn't go to school for art, or I didn't pursue art in some other way. But other than that, I don't know. It's not very isolating. Like I said, I think that's just something I'm doing to myself. But if there are other people out there who also have maybe a different career right now and are doing art on the side, give me a shout out.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's certainly interesting to hear about, because I could, even for me, and I'm really I'm still a baby on the grand scheme of things. I am in my early 20s.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel like I'm super old when talking to people, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I mean, even like I'm not necessarily the comments on Webtoon, but I kind of the general vibe from not comments on mine specifically, but on comments on many of the other Webtoons. You get a sense that it's definitely a younger audience
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure.
and younger creators as well. So
I might cut this out. No, no, I'm gonna leave it in. I really kind of wish that Webtoons analytics, you could see like the age range of your readers, because I am very
you and
curious.
you and I have the same exact wish. I absolutely wish I could see, and I think I mean, I have the disclaimer in the very beginning of my comic. While the themes aren't like explicit or anything like that. They're still like for an audience that is older. So I'd say 20s is the age group I would prefer reading my comic. I would really love to see that that's reflected in my current the current audience.
Mm.
So yeah, that statistic would be really good to have. And also, like, I don't want a bunch of youngins reading it and me writing it for someone older and then, I don't know, doing something that they wouldn't understand or not necessarily inappropriate, but I just I don't know. I agree. I really wish you could see the age group or the age range at least that's reading your comic.
Yeah, and it would definitely help to see if you're setting your tone right at the beginning, because I feel like that's
Yes.
sort of when people decide, so it sort of determines like the demographics of who's going to be reading your comic.
Absolutely.
Like I know for sure too that from the data I have from YouTube, which is a lot more thorough, most of the
hmm
people who watch my content are in their 20s or their early 30s. There are some
Oh, some
teens
early
too, but it's
30s. Give
mainly
me a shout out. Sorry.
there are some teens too, but it's mainly like adults chilling over here.
That's good.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more specifically about your webtoon. Really quick
Mhm.
reminder for people in the comments. If you're watching the premiere, you can do this later, but if you're watching, you might want to go pause and just look through the webcomic a bit first. So let's talk about Voice of the Siren. There should be a link in the description. So I really wanted to talk about your world building because when I read it, that was like one of the biggest things that stuck out to me. Like you seem to have it could just be me, but your world just feels so full and like there's so much going on to me. Like it was really excited to learn more.
Oh, I have, you can't see, but I have the biggest grin right now. That makes me so happy. Um, it's so big because I think I don't know if you could. I think you mentioned this one. Somebody on your the Webtoon T channel mentioned it, that you're kind of just sitting there and then an idea comes to you and then you write it down. I
Yeah,
think I have too
yeah.
many of those moments. um, no, to be honest, when I first started writing the comic, um, I was just kind of like, I don't know, beat by beat. It wasn't really a well thought out story, I think.
Mm.
And when I would go back and read it, I'm like, oh, this is crap. This is inconsistent. I need to have something that's consistent. Okay, maybe I'll write a little bit on the background. And what ended up taking, I don't know, days, months, I don't even, I sat down and kind of wrote like a backstory.
Mm.
And like the history and like technology and all these kind of things, rules for the technology. In my own experience as an audience member, I don't like when, especially like a long-term story has like inconsistencies with either like the magic in the world building or just the rules for fighting, whatnot. So I sat down and wrote it out first. And then I'm like, okay, now I have some groundwork. Now we're going to go with the story. So that's how I kind of, it's kind of backwards in a way, but
Mm.
that's how I do it.
Yeah, yeah. That was definitely something that I went through too. I think I was the one mentioning it in Webtoon T. But going back through all of the old world building I did, because I ended up doing a lot, but I did it
hmm
probably around chapter 5 of the comic. So I don't know what episode that is that, but probably like episode 20-ish is when I ended up
hmm
doing a lot of the world building. And I ended up I'm editing a bunch of it for the reboot, but most of it's gonna end up the same. But when you change just one or two small things, a lot of other things have to change in small ways as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of the butterfly effect. It's like, well, I can just change this here. And then I forget maybe down the road I did this, or that's just going to completely change the trajectory, not just the story, but like the rules. So,
Yeah, yeah, like uh don't tell anyone, I'm gonna cut this out. But
okay.
uh I'm gonna cut part of this out. But I'm sure by the time this interview comes out, I will have announced it. But don't tell anyone after this call. But the main premise for
It's
the
okay.
new
I don't have any comic friends.
Pat,
I'm teasing,
Pat.
teasing. Go ahead.
The main premise for the new comic revolves around sort of a competition to see who's going to become like the Grand Witch or like who's going to be basically in charge.
Ooh,
And
that's cool.
yeah, yeah. I didn't end up changing much of the world building and the magic, but then I
Hmm.
realized that the fact that there's this giant competition around who would be in charge is going to actually change a lot of the culture. Like, are there going to be groups of
Uh-huh.
people who work together to try and stay in charge? How is the city developed now that there's probably like an arena or something for these people to compete in? Like, there's a lot of stuff that remained untouched, but then there's a lot of stuff that I had to go back and then tweak so that it feels more consistent with that type of world.
Right, and that's what I do too when I'm changing something like that. That sounds really cool. I will keep it a secret. That seems really exciting. I'm really excited. I'm excited for you to get to that point.
Thank you, me too. It's gonna the goal for the new series is to just make it very clear from the beginning what the goals are for the characters because I feel like that was
Sure.
part of what I was missing out on.
Sure.
So I'm going to try and show some of the things that I was waiting and holding back on with the original comic and that probably wouldn't have shown up for months right in the first
Uh-huh.
3 episodes.
Yeah, it'll give you context more for their motivations and everything.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
That's cool. And by the way, I don't know if you want to add this too. Your prologue is just amazing, like the current one, and I'm sure the new one will be as well. Like it was just like the art style was fun, but just the tone and it pulled me in. And usually this maybe you do want to cut this. Usually comics don't pull me in.
Oh, thank
I
you.
just yeah, seriously, it's really good. So
I really appreciate it. I put a lot of work into that new prologue. I'm glad people
good.
enjoyed it.
Good.
Blah, blah, blah. So another thing around world building that I wanted to talk about with your series is sort of like writing and creating an environment that's in the future. Do you think you could talk about that a little?
Yeah, sure. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying about like when I think of something, I write it down right away in my idea bank, which is this massive Google Doc that I will go through and clean the trash out of sometimes. But sometimes I'll get ideas for like technology or I don't know, just thoughts of like, you know what, this might happen in the future. I wonder if I should put this in my comic. Um, so yeah, I mean, and influences come from everywhere, like sci-fi or reading scientific articles. I mean, they come all over the place. So I just have fun making maybe predictions,
Mhm.
and some that are desirable, and some that you will see in my comic are not very desirable. So,
Yeah. And then now that I think about it too, going back to sort of the sci-fi notion,
mhm.
do you have any thought that you put into around just the sci-fi? Because I took this one sci-fi course in college and we were discussing how certain authors want their sci-fi to be more realism focused and then certain ones
Mhm.
have it almost to the point where it's sort of similar to magic. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Oh, I don't know. Um, I'm going to be honest. When I was writing, at least the first bits of my comic, I didn't really have a genre in mind. I'm just
Mhm.
like, I like this stuff. I'm just throwing it together. This is what we're doing. Like when I had to categorize it on Webtoon, I was like, well, it's kind of a drama. Guess it's sci-fi. But kind of back to the question. Um, I, I don't know. So I want to on a deeper level. I kind of want to present something that appears to be, maybe this is spoilers, that appears to be almost utopian in many aspects,
Mm.
and then kind of yank you out of it. So kind of that realistic thing. And there are things going on that are absolutely parallels to today, politically and socially. But I don't know if that answers your question, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That was definitely very insightful, and I'm glad you shared that.
thanks.
So the next topic that I sort of wanted to talk about that has to do with world building is just like creating societies.
hmm
Because you have
So it
like,
kind of ties in.
yeah,
Oh, go
yeah,
ahead.
just keep
Sorry.
going.
Yeah, so I think this is mostly kind of when I was talking about what inspired me from Japan is you just need to consider that there are other values that not just other individuals have. I mean, obviously, between individuals, our values differ sometimes
Mm.
greatly, but culturally, there are values that we take advantage of. And so, I wanted to try and take a step out of my own little um, ignorant box and consider other values and um, create societies that kind of mirror different societies today, but not to the T, but still reflect the diversity in values.
Mm. So, do you have any advice surrounding creating different communities for people who are trying to create a more elaborate world for their webtoon?
Oh, I don't know if I have great advice. Just be well, just be well read. I mean, read a lot. I mean, the advice I would give before the thing that's happening right now would be to travel, but if you can afford it, obviously. But
Mm.
I don't recommend that right now. Stay safe. Stay home. um, yeah, I don't know. Immerse yourself in something different. I guess I don't know. I'm not the best person, I think, to give the advice on it. But yeah, read. That's one thing we can do now, I guess, in this horrible time.
Yeah, yeah. Don't worry about it. That was helpful. Um,
Thanks.
so the next thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was working with a large cast because
Mhm.
you have a lot of characters in your webtoon and not everyone can juggle that well. How would you recommend dealing with that and what's been your experience around that while working on your webtoon?
Oh, I, I thank you. I appreciate that. It is hard to juggle that. I think number one thing that you do when you're writing characters is give them a purpose. Um, so you can often combine characters when you're seeing, hey, these two characters are serving the same purpose to the story. So that's definitely something to be aware of. I keep a something I have named character sheet, but it's not a visual reference. It's actually a Google sheet with all my characters, and it has the purpose is listed. It's one of the columns that I have. But I don't remember all these things all the time. So definitely track the information you want to remember about your characters, things that are pertinent to the story.
Mm.
Um, in however, written form, visual form, whatever works for you. But keep track of it and reference it, and don't be afraid to change it. I mean, obviously, if you're changing it, you want to make sure that you're not being inconsistent with what you've already written. But yeah, keep track of it and give every character a purpose.
So the next thing I wanted to go into was your writing process. So how do you go about writing your comic?
So I kind of make a rough outline in the beginning, and that changes like 90% of the time. So I kind of do sandbox writing. So I write something that I don't know. I just kind of sit down and get into the mode and do it, and then I take a break, and
Mm.
then I go back and I read it and I digest it and I rewrite it and walk away and digest it and come back and rewrite it again. So rewrite. Don't be afraid to erase stuff. I will, like, if I have like a scene that I wrote that I really love and I don't want to lose it, but it's not pertinent to the story, it's okay to get rid of it. You can save it somewhere else. So I think just rewrite, and yeah. So that's how I write, and um, sometimes, like when I first wrote the story, I think the first document I saved for scripts was 2013.
Mm.
So this was kind of after the world building phase. I didn't read them for like a year. So it took a year for me to go back and digest some of it. And I mean, I'll be passively thinking about it every day, but I'll go back and read it. And maybe at the time I thought it was amazing. And then I'm reading it and going, oh God, this is crap. I need to rewrite this. But yeah, I think I know some people don't want to spend that much time on the writing process, But if you give yourself at least a little break, even if it's writing something different, or I don't know, even just going and watching a movie and then coming back to it, I think it's important to do that rewrite phase.
Mm. Yeah, I would definitely agree. So next I wanted to go over, so what are your favorite parts of your art process?
Oh, this is a hard question. I like the writing. No, I think thumbing is my favorite part. It's kind of I feel like it's like a translation almost. It's like you're taking what you've written and you're putting it into the visual medium. Because when I write, which is probably not a good thing that I do, but I just write it out. I kind of write it out. These are the facts. This is what's going on. This person is doing this. I don't really write it in a way that, hey, in this panel you need to represent this, or you should do it from this angle, or you should be this zoomed in, or here's the even the colors. Like I don't plan for that at all. That kind of happens as I'm thumbing and taking what I've written and like I said, translating that into the visual medium. So I think that's the funnest part, and it's also the hardest part because I'll be sitting there and trying to thumb, and I'm thinking this is not what I see in my head. Even though I don't really see it as a visual thing in my head, it's still not really representing what I want it to represent. So tedious, but fun. The funnest part for me is thumbing.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think that that might actually be my favorite part of the art process as well. It's nice to just see your vision sort of start to become reality.
Exactly. Yes. Agreed.
And it is generally the quickest part, too. Inking takes me a while and coloring takes me a while.
Yes. Thumbing. I think I've posted maybe on Twitter, like, I don't know if that's ended yet because I'm like really bad with social media, but the whole like the sketch and the final product, my sketch is just like stick figure lines. It's really really a quick thing for me too. I think I also like making it quick because I want to go back and erase stuff.
Mm.
Because when I start to convert it into inking, I might do a second sketch layer, but not all the time.
So the next thing I wanted to talk about with your webcomic is your coloring, because your coloring is another thing that I really enjoyed while reading your series. You seem to have a really great ability to select colors.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I have imposter syndrome right now. um, so when I started prepping to do the prologue, and actually, I started episode 1 before I drew the prologue, kind of as a test run. You might be able to see that in the difference of the art. Part of the first episode was drawn, I think, in 2018, and I didn't even start posting until 2020. But anyway, I was like, oh God, I have to color it. I don't know what to do. So when I did digital art before, I often just did like, hey, these are the flats. Yay, it's pretty, it's done. So what I did at first was trying to research like, okay, what colors mean what? And how do I use color? So I watched a lot of YouTube videos on color in film.
Mm.
And I soon learned that red isn't always love, or red isn't always anger, or things like this. So it's more use the colors how you want, and you will teach the reader as you go, based off of like the other things in the context of what's going on. Okay, red. If I want red to mean this, I'm going to use red every time something suspenseful or scary is going on. So you kind of pick your own rules and then kind of go with it. And like the coloring itself and shading, when I first started practicing before I published, I would use like a really limited palette. Like I would choose like a 5-color palette. You can find like fun palette accounts online. And it was tedious because here I am trying to match what I want the colors to be with my limited palette. And I think that's a good exercise. But then I discovered this magical cheat. I think it's a cheat called a gradient map.
Oh, yes, the gradient map.
Oh man, I use them too much, I think. But what I do is I'll find my favorite palettes and then I'll convert it into gradient map in Clip Studio Paint, and then I'll tweak it. I mean, I won't use it completely opaque. Sometimes I'll do it like 50% opacity, and then I'll mix it with other things like adjustments in brightness, adjustments in contrast. I just play kind of. I think I'm getting the desired effect, and I'm really glad that you like my color choice, because sometimes I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I hope this works.
Oh, same, same, same. I most certainly did not know what I was doing when I started off coloring.
It's hard. Like, I mean, the only art school I've had, I mean, I took a few art courses in undergraduate, but those were all drawing courses. I didn't take any painting or anything like that. So, like, color theory, what is that even? So, we did like the primary stuff and the secondary colors, like in my art schools in middle and high school, but that really didn't teach me anything. So, yeah, I just watched a lot of YouTube videos and have done a lot of playing. So,
All right. So then let's move on to the final section of our interview. We're going to be talking about advice. So, first question is, do you have advice for creating a webtoon where there's a lot of like action going on?
I'm having imposter syndrome again. It's so hard. I actually loathe writing the action scenes. They're really hard because something will be going on in my head of what I want to happen, and it's often a quick thing because I'm not sure about you, but when I'm writing, sometimes or definitely drawing, I listen to music, and sometimes I'll have like this one song that goes with this one scene, and I see certain things during this part of the song and this part of the song, and kind of putting that onto paper is so hard. So I thumb really quickly and then go back over it. Another way of doing it that I've done in the past is kind of writing it as I'm seeing it, like in words, because sometimes it's quicker that way. And then I'll kind of slowly go back and draw it and think, okay, yeah, this is kind of what I see, and then maybe play the song again that I'm listening to, or just going back over it and looking at it. Does this make sense? Did I miss something? Are the movements clear? So just maybe, I don't know, be critical of yourself and figure out a way that works for you.
So the next question I wanted to ask you about is consistently publishing a webtoon, because I really admire how many episodes you've done. And a lot of people start a webtoon, they get through the first 3, maybe 10 episodes, and then they quit. How do you keep yourself going and working on episodes?
Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you that. No. So I follow a routine. So I am quite an impulsive person, especially when it comes to art. It's like sometimes I sit down and like, yeah, I don't feel like drawing. I want to go and write music, or I don't really want to draw my comic today. I want to do this, or I want to work on paper, or I want to play with glitter. So, so I put in a routine for myself, set goals. So my main goal is try and get 4 or 5 panels done every day. And it's hard. It's so hard, especially when you're working. So like me, for example, I work full time, a job that's not even related. So I have to make time to do this every day. And guess what? I don't do it every day. When I first was doing it, I was pretty hard on myself when I would miss a day. But you got to still give yourself some grace when you're doing it. But yeah, I think the main thing is figure out a routine. And even if you want to do, like, if you want to be publishing consistently, like I to be honest, I think if folks have to be doing something else in their life and then they'll come and work on it later and publish an episode maybe in a month, that's totally fine. Whatever works. I feel like when I first started, I was listening to advice from different YouTubers about, hey, you should be publishing consistently. And I think it comes from old advice to publish daily. Back when people were kind of publishing a page a day
Yeah, I
in the
think it
webcomics.
actually
Yeah.
my theory behind it is it comes from the way that certain sites' algorithms used to work that I don't even think are necessarily true anymore. Like YouTube used to want to publish daily for a couple years, and now I don't think that's the case anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
But like, depending on what you're doing, it doesn't always make sense to be consistent. Like, I enjoy being consistent with my webtoon, but that's just because I like to have sort of like a rhythm in my life and I don't have anything else
Exactly.
going on.
Yeah.
But for
Yeah.
YouTube, I just post whenever I feel like it or whenever I have a video ready. And I try not to stress out about having a particular schedule because I don't think it really matters for YouTube anymore, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah, and even for Webtoon, I feel like yeah, it might be nice, but I don't really know like what the payoff is necessarily. I mean, sure, yeah, your audience wants content as frequently as possible, but there's so much content already, and so I mean, if you miss a week or two, it's okay. Or if you set goals for yourself and you don't make them, it's okay. Maybe you need to change the goals, or maybe you need to give it another shot and try again next time. But yeah, I mean, if you want to be consistent with your updating, and I try to publish weekly, and if I don't, I don't. And recently, I have not published because I've been very busy with a move.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, just do you push yourself a little bit, but not too hard. And if you want to be consistent, establish routines for yourself. I don't know if I have any other advice. Like, I want your advice. No, no, I mean, just I'm the kind of person who's like a people pleaser, and I'm really hard on myself. And I think it's important. I don't know how you are with your creation process, but self care is important. It's more important than than sticking to a regimented schedule, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, 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 for sure, for sure. Especially when it comes to doing stuff online too. People once you start to get an audience, and it doesn't even have to be that big an audience, people start to expect a lot from you and they're not
Mm,
really contributing themselves. And
yes.
it it's nice to have an audience, and I think like there is stuff for sure that you need to do if you want to keep up an audience, but you don't have to listen to their demands, especially if they're not directly giving you money.
Oh, exactly. I absolutely agree. And it's hard to remember that too. It's because it's like, at least for me, when I go and even get just one comment, I'm like, oh yay! And so I'm kind of like in the mindset where I don't want to say vulnerable, but I am more. I speak English. I promise. I don't know.
Affected by comments?
um,
Influenced by comments?
yeah, I'm more. I think I think vulnerable might be a good word though.
Mm.
To want to give in to whatever somebody might request of you. Um, so yeah, it's hard.
Okay. So then now we're going to jump into our final question, which is, do you have any life advice? It could be about Webtoon, but it could really be about anything. Just being a person chilling on this planet.
um, oh gosh, as a teacher, there's so many things that I would tell my students. But I think one of the most important things is life is too short to not follow your dreams. I mean, I was kind of touching on this before. I felt like I had to take a certain path. And while I don't regret the path that I took, it would have been nice to be working on things along the way. And if you want to be an artist, be an artist. Do it. If you want to, I don't know, if you want to be a trash person and pick up trash, do that. Don't let anybody tell you differently. It's so easy to be affected by things that people tell you that you're supposed to be doing. And it's hard to actually sit down and reflect on what you want for yourself, especially when that's not really a trained skill that people get in schools or anything. So take care of yourself and do what you want. Like obviously not hurting other people, but Don't be a jerk. But yeah, again, life is too short to not follow your dreams. So
Thank you so much for coming on. This has been such a fun interview.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So, really quick, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me on Instagram at Jehded Waffles. I think it's one word. That's how where I am. um, yeah, so Jehded Waffles, one word, Jehded. Put it on me to spell it funny. Waffles, the way you spell waffles. I'm at Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't really post to Twitter as much. I'm on the old Tumblr. Also don't post there very much. And then you can read my comic on Tapas and on Webtoon Canvas. And maybe someday my own site.
Oh. So, I will have links in the description for everyone, so be sure to check that out. I want to thank you again so much for coming, and everyone be sure to read Voice of Siren when you're done with this video. See ya!
Thank you.